Fans are in shock over what transpired on the last day of filming. Reports are coming in that the Love and Hip Hop set was completely destroyed following the most explosive fight in the franchise's history. It all began with a heated argument between the men and Kirk Frost that quickly got out of hand. Yandy Smith attempted to intervene, but Rashida wasn't having it and clapped back with accusations that no one saw coming. At that point, things got physical, and young Jacques was seen attempting to calm everyone down, but even he was powerless to stop the chaos. Down right away, according to sources, Mama Scott was on the scene yelling at the actors to stop, but it was too late. What was supposed to be a joyous rap descended into complete chaos, with broken equipment, bruised egos, and rumors of lawsuits. Flying fans are now demanding to know why everything went so wrong, what secrets were revealed that pushed the actors to their limits, and why the network is remaining so silent. One thing is certain, though this isn't the end, just the beginning of the most shocking. The final day of filming Love and Hip Hop Atlanta, supposed to be a celebration because the cast had finished another season and the drama had reached its climax. However, nobody was ready for what would happen that day. It started with a casual conversation between Minji and Kirk Frost, two men whose rivalry had been simmering for months. The tension between them was supposed to be resolved in front of the men. DC, who was already tense from the pressure of the season, snapped. His face turned red with rage, and he lunged toward Kirk, pushing him with all of his might. What? No! One anticipated was the sheer intensity of the argument that would unfold. The fight quickly escalated from a simple disagreement over a comment Mency made about Kirk's parenting. Kirk, who had never been one to back down, fired back with a comment about Men DC's past mistakes, implying that he wasn't in any position to judge. His cameras captured the moment, but what happened next was even more shocking. After weeks of trying to keep the peace, Mendesk's wife intervened to stop her husband. Her attempts were futile. She yelled at Mency, "This isn't the time, babe. Stop it." However, Mendesk wasn't listening, and as the situation spiraled out of control, Rashida, always the voice of reason, tried to stop it. She'd also step in, but she just made matters worse by yelling at Kirk, "Don't let him do this. Show some self-control." Kirk became furious and yelled back at her, saying, "Don't tell me what to do." The ensuing confusion was a haze of accusations and insults, with Kirk and Yandy yelling at one another with their faces inches apart while Rashida and Yandy attempted to break them up. But it was obvious that this was now more than just a little argument. It was personal. The crew was visibly shaken and unsure of how to handle the intensity of the confrontation when a loud crash echoed through the set. The scene that followed was even more shocking than the argument. In a fit of rage, Kirk shoved a nearby prop table, sending it crashing to the ground. Despite this, he knocked over a set piece, sending a mirror flying across the room. The entire set looked like a war zone, and fans watching from the sidelines were shocked because no one had ever seen Love and Hip. The drama had always been intense, but this was something completely different. Young Jock, who had been trying to keep a low profile throughout the season, suddenly stepped in and tried to calm down Mendeces and Kirk by putting a hand on each of their shoulders. However, the situation had gotten out of hand, and the men pushed him away, telling him to keep out of it. "This is between me and Kirk," he yelled. The crew was at a loss for what to do, and the producers were frantically trying to figure out how to stop the madness. It was obvious that this was no longer about the show. It was real raw. It's the entire franchise's mastermind. Mona Scott was reportedly on set during all of this chaos. According to eyewitnesses, she was seen screaming at the cast and crew to calm down, saying, "This isn't what we planned. Get it under control." However, the damage had already been done. The set was destroyed, the cast was split, and what should have been a moment of closure had devolved into a full-scale meltdown as the argument reached its peak. Security intervened, but even they were unable to control the scene. Rashida, on the other hand, was seen storming off, muttering under her breath that this was supposed to be a celebration rather than a disaster. The aftermath was just as dramatic as the fight itself, with fans taking to social media to express their shock, asking, "Did you guys see that fight on Love and Hip?" Kirk Frost was left standing in the middle of the chaos, looking just as angry, and Yuan Dandy, who was visibly shaken, stood in the background trying to make sense of what had just happened. Hop. One user tweeted, "This is a whole new level," while another added, "I thought the drama was scripted, but this is real." They really went at it. Rumors began to circulate that this fight was the last straw for some of the cast members, with sources close to the production claiming that several people were considering leaving the show permanently. One cast member allegedly said in a private conversation, the network, meanwhile, scrambled to manage the fallout. Some reports claimed that they attempted to hide the extent of the damage, but the truth was already out. Fans began posting behind-the-scenes footage of the devastation on the internet. And the reunion special that was scheduled to air shortly after the season finale was postponed. Desperate to salvage what little remained of the season, the producers started thinking about how they would handle the fallout in future episodes. Would they confront the fight head-on, or would they ignore it? As for the cast, Yuan Dandy, Kirk, Rashida, and the others from DC were far from over. Were left to pick up the pieces of their broken relationships, both on and off camera. According to some sources, VC and Kirk's tension was so high that they might not even be able to share a scene together in the future. According to others, Yandi was thinking about leaving the show to protect her family's reputation because it's not worth it anymore. She was heard saying that the fans were divided as well. Some were still devoted to the show, insisting that the drama was what made it so addictive, while others were disgusted by what had happened and called for the network to cancel Love and Hip Hop once and for all. As the last day of filming drew to a close, one viewer remarked, "It's just exploitation." Everyone was wondering what would happen next. Would this tragic incident spell the end of Love and Hip Hop? Or would it only push the show into even darker territory? One thing was certain, though. The drama was far from over. As the cameras turned off and the set fell silent, the cast, crew, and fans were left waiting for the next shocking twist. Tension simmered between the cast members and the crew members. This time, it wasn't just about on-screen drama. It was personal. Kirk Frost, who had been at the center of the controversy from the beginning, was defiant after his heated exchange. With Mency, he made it clear that he wasn't backing down, saying, "I'm not afraid of anyone, and I'm sure not afraid of men." This dramatic outburst, which had come to be associated with Love and Hip Hop, was different. What had begun as a simple disagreement quickly turned out of control and became the most intense conflict in the show's history. People close to Kirk noticed that his behavior had become more erratic in recent months. He wasn't just angry. He was lashing out in an attempt to assert dominance in a world that felt increasingly out of his control. Rasha, his wife, was caught in the middle. She had always been the calming influence in their marriage, but this time was different. The tension between Kirk and Mindy C's was starting to tear apart her family. She had seen the turmoil firsthand and struggled with how to support her husband, while also she told a close friend, her voice full of emotion, "I just don't know how to fix this anymore. I never wanted it to get this bad, but every day it seems like things are falling apart," she said, adding that the one strong bond between her and Kirk was showing signs of strain behind closed doors. Rashida had started to wonder if it was worth it to stay in the marriage. She had always been the voice of reason in their relationship, but even she knew that some battles were too big to overcome in the end. He told a crew member during a break, "I came in here to show my family's journey, but all we've gotten is drama. It isn't real, and I can't be part of it anymore." In the face of the chaos on set, she started to feel more and more alone, and men were less likely to forgive or forget. It wasn't just aimed at Kirk. It was directed at the entire production, at the system that had allowed things to get so out of hand. Yandi confided to a trusted friend that her wife was caught in a conflict. She had always stood by Mank through thick and thin, but the stress of it was beginning to get to her. This isn't what we signed up for, and I can't blame him. This isn't the kind of environment we want for our children, but Yandi couldn't ignore the reality of her career. She had built an empire with love and hip-hop. I don't know how we got here, Yandindi said, her eyes welling with tears. I thought we were building something beautiful, but I don't know if we're even going to make it through this. As the arguments raged on, the producers scrambled to contain the arguments. Leaving it behind was not an easy decision, as the show that had given her a platform to share her story was now the very thing threatening to tear her family apart. She had to make the impossible decision to stand by her husband and walk away from everything she had worked for, or continue on the show and risk losing her marriage in the process. One producer was heard saying, "We can't let this break the cast apart, not with the finale coming up. We need them to be a family, not enemies." But despite the attempts to mediate, the divisions within the cast were only getting deeper. Young Jock, who was always known for his sense of humor and lighthearted approach to life, was clearly shaken by the growing animosity on set. The fallout was becoming clear that the situation was spiraling out of control, and that the carefully curated image of love and hip-hop was beginning to unravel. "We need to get this under control." "What I signed up for?" he was heard saying in frustration. "We're supposed to be a team, a family, but it's like everyone's out for themselves now. I just want to get through this without all the fighting." Jock, he had always been the show's peacemaker, but even he had his limits, and as tensions increased, he started to distance himself from the drama by remaining silent and avoiding the heated exchanges that had become normal. The producers in a tweet said, "This isn't reality anymore. It's just a bunch of people pretending to be something they're not." Another fan said, "I can't believe the drama these people are creating. This is not what we signed up for." Other fans were equally shocked by how far the show had deviated from its original premise and how lost they were. A mediator was brought in as a last resort to try to resolve the conflicts amongst the cast members. The mediator's job was to lead a group meeting where everyone would have an opportunity to voice their complaints and ideally find some common ground. However, as soon as the meeting started, it became evident that the wounds were too deep to be healed with a simple conversation. "I've had enough of this," Kirk snapped, interrupting the mediator. "We're not here to fix things. We're here to set the record straight." His attitude of defiance as the meeting went on, more cast members vented their anger in a flood of emotions, saying things like, "I don't care about the show anymore," which only served to stoke the fire and escalate the confrontation. One cast member remarked, "At this point, we're all being played and it's just a paycheck." The other cast members, who had previously been bound together by their common experiences, were now openly discussing the toll the program had taken on their lives. "Supposed to be our ticket to something better," another cast member acknowledged. "But all we've gotten is drama, and we're all paying the price." At this point, the producers realized they were in a crisis. The show, which had once been a cultural phenomenon, was now on the verge of going out of business. The cast's divisions were too deep, and it was becoming clear that some members might not return for another season. "We can't keep going like this," one producer admitted. The show's finale is just days away, so the cast had to face the fact that their futures were uncertain. Would they be able to put their differences aside and carry on with the love and hip-hop story, or was this the end of an era? As the days went by, the cast members' emotional toll increased to the point where it was impossible to ignore how what had started out as a dramatic onset dispute had now escalated into a full-blown personal crisis that affected everyone involved. The fallout from the explosive altercations was far-reaching, and nobody, not even the producers, could have predicted what would happen next. Kirk Frost, the lightning rod for controversy, found himself at the center of the chaos. His earlier statements, which were full of anger and defiance, had resonated with many people, especially men's. He had said this repeatedly as tensions between the two men reached new heights, but as the days went by, it became clear that Kirk's bravado was, "I don't know how much more I can take." Rashida confessed to a close friend as she paced back and forth in her dressing room. "Kirk is pushing everyone away, and I can't keep pretending like everything is okay," she said, her voice trembling, revealing the vulnerability that lay beneath her normally composed exterior as Rashida dealt with the fallout from her marriage. Behind the scenes, Rashida was also struggling to keep it all together, knowing deep down that he had crossed the line and that the fallout was far from over. "I didn't sign up for this men's, but one night after a particularly stressful day of filming," he vented to Yandandi. Menth and Yandy were having their own private reckoning. The couple had always been a fan favorite, and their love story was one of the show's more heartfelt arcs. However, now that things had reached a boiling point, the normally calm and collected DC was visibly agitated. His frustration had been building for months, and it seemed that the time had finally come for him to speak out. "We've been through worse, darling," but even Yandandi, who had supported Menzi through his darkest moments, was starting to doubt their future on the show. "I can't keep pretending like everything is fine," she confessed to a close friend, and I don't blame him. The never-ending cycle of drama, lies, and manipulations was too much for him to handle. "This isn't the life we envisioned for our family." Over the years, the cameras had recorded innumerable moments of unfiltered emotion. But nothing could have prepared the audience for what was about to happen. The conflict grew more intense every day, and nobody, not even the show's producers, could keep the drama under control. What started out as a straightforward reality show evolved into a high-stakes game where reputations, relationships, and futures were at stake. Jock, who had always been the glue holding the group together, knew that the situation had gone too far for the producers, who took pride in creating the drama that fans craved. Young Jock, known for his easygoing nature and humor, was shocked by the level of animosity that had taken over the set. "I never thought it would come to this," he said, his voice tinged with disbelief. "We're all supposed to be a family, but it feels like everyone's turning on each other. We're now having trouble regaining control." One producer told a group of colleagues, "We can't keep pushing these people to their breaking point," adding, "We need to figure out a way to mend the rifts or this show is going to collapse." The producers were faced with a dilemma: whether the show could continue or if it was too late to repair the damage that had been done despite the attempts to mediate the conflict. The drama was what had made Love and Hip Hop so popular, but the personal toll it was taking on the cast was indisputable. As the situation worsened, the cast members who had once been united by their common experiences were now split by a deep-seated animosity that no one seemed to be able to overcome. "This isn't fun anymore," one cast member admitted to a crew. "Remember during a break? We're all just going through the motions, but no one really cares about each other anymore." The once close-knit group had been shattered, and the cracks were only getting wider with each day as tensions increased. Kirk's behavior became even more inconsistent. His disobedience toward men had only fueled the conflict's flames, and it was starting to show in his actions. At one point, Kirk yelled, his face flushed with rage, "I'm not backing down from anyone, not even Menzies." His words reverberated throughout the set, giving the cast and crew a sense of unease. It was evident that Kirk wasn't just angry. He was unraveling, and nobody knew how to stop it, while Rashida had to make an impossible choice. "I don't know what's going to happen next," she said quietly, "but I can't keep living like this. I need peace." Her emotional turmoil was evident, and it seemed like no one could give her the reassurance she desperately needed. Mendesi was also at a crossroads. She had always been the steadying influence in her life, but even she was starting to wonder how much longer they could continue down this path. Her decision was weighing heavily on her, and she had no clear answers. The cast members weren't the only ones experiencing stress. Fans who had been watching the show for years were starting to voice their concerns on social media, and viewers were shocked by the growing drama. "This path, I don't know what's worse," she said to herself. As she sat alone in her dressing room, she also considered the drama of the show and the impact it's having on our family. The weight of the decision she had to make was overwhelming, and it was obvious that whatever choice she made would have a lasting effect on her marriage, career, and future. The producers rushed to figure out how to salvage the situation as the fun drew nearer. Would they be able to mend the broken relationships between the cast members? Or was this the end of the line for love? One fan tweeted, "They're tearing each other apart for a paycheck, and it's sad to watch." Others quickly expressed their disappointment in how the show had changed over the years, saying, "This isn't the love and hip-hop I used to watch." And another fan said, "It's just a mess now. It's a mess now." It was unclear whether the cast would be able to come together one last time to make it through the finale, or if the fractures in their relationships would be too deep to overcome the show's fate. The future of the cast remained uncertain as the final day of shooting approached. Would they reconcile? Or was this the end of love and hip-hop as everyone knew it? As the cast members prepared for the final day of filming, the tension on set reached an all-time high. No one knew what the future held for the show or its stars. Kirk Frost, who had been at the center of much of the chaos, appeared to be on the verge of a meltdown. His normally composed demeanor had been replaced with an air of volatility with each passing hour. His outbursts became more frequent, his temper shorter, and his defiance toward the producers and cast members more intense. The cast members were now a fractured family, each individual struggling with their own emotions and conflicting loyalties. The fallout from the explosive arguments had left no one untouched, and it was becoming increasingly evident that the drama that transpired on set would leave scars far beyond the cameras. His words, though confident, were laced with frustration and fear. Despite his bravado, the cracks in his armor were widening, and it was impossible to predict how far he would go before completely breaking down. Kirk had been one of the show's most unpredictable characters, but he had muttered, "This whole situation is a joke," during one of his many heated conversations with crew members. "They want to paint me as the villain, but I'm just speaking the truth." On the other hand, Rashida had reached a breaking point, and the final day of filming loomed like a dark cloud hanging over her. "I don't know if I can do this anymore," she confessed to Yandi one evening, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's tearing me apart to watch Kirk act like this." "I thought we were stronger than this." Yandandi, the listener, nodded. This seemed to be his own emotional breakdown. The weight of being caught in the middle of her husband's collapse and dealing with the show's drama was taking its toll. And it was evident that Rashida was torn between her loyalty to Kirk and her own well-being. Meanwhile, Menek, who had remained largely silent during the height of the drama, found himself caught in an emotional whirlwind. His frustration with the situation had been simmering beneath the surface, but as the last day of a rare moment of vulnerability, he told Yandi, "I can't keep pretending like everything's fine. As the shooting approached, this is too much. We didn't come here for this. I came here to focus on my family and my future, not to be dragged into this mess." "I hear you, baby. But let's just get through the finale and then," said Yandandi, who had always stood for male VCs through thick and thin. As the cast prepared for what was supposed to be a celebratory final day, the atmosphere on set was anything but festive. The producers, who had worked tirelessly to keep the drama flowing throughout the season, now faced a much larger challenge: how to handle a situation that had escalated far beyond their control. "We'll figure things out." But even Yandandi knew that the damage had already been done. Their time on the show had been filled with drama, but now that the final moments of shooting were upon them, it was evident that their relationship with the show and possibly with each other might never be the same again. "We've never seen anything like this before," one producer said to another, her voice tinged with worry. "This is bigger than just reality TV. This is real-life fallout, and we can't predict how it's going to play out." The uncertainty was evident. The once tightly controlled set had become a pressure cooker, with every interaction loaded with tension. The crew, accustomed to the constant ebb and flow of reality show drama, was now walking on eggshells. And nobody knew if the final day of shooting would end in a dramatic resolution or if it would be the catalyst for even greater fallout. "Man, this is getting out of hand," he said to a fellow cast member as they got ready for the final shoot. "I don't know what's going to happen, but I hope we make it through this without another fight. My heart can't take much more of this." Jock, who is always the joker and peacemaker, tried to lighten the mood. But even his trademark sense of humor couldn't cut through the palpable tension. His lighthearted attempt to diffuse the situation only served to highlight the deep rift that had developed among the cast as the cameras rolled. The producers held their breath for a seamless conclusion to the season's final scene. But they were unprepared for the eruption that followed. Kirk, who had been unusually quiet throughout the day, suddenly snapped. "I'm done pretending," he yelled, his voice resonating through the set. "This is all a game, and I'm not playing anymore." Rashida was visibly shaken by Kirk's outburst and tried to intervene, but Kirk stopped her. "This isn't the time for this," she begged, her voice wavering with emotion. "Please don't do this now. Let's just finish this and go home." But Kirk wasn't having it. He declared, turning toward the crew, "I've had enough." Meanies, who had been watching the scene from a distance, stepped forward and said, "If you want drama, I'll give it to you. But don't expect me to be anyone's puppet anymore." The room went silent. The tension was so intense that it could be cut with a knife, and the cameras were rolling, capturing every moment. But what they missed was the brokenness in Kirk's eyes. The man who had been so confident just days before now seemed like a shell of his former self. "Get it?" he said in a surprisingly composed voice. "But this isn't the way to handle it. We're all dealing with our own problems, so you don't have to do this alone." However, Kirk refused to back down in a final act of defiance, saying, "I'm done with all of you," before storming off set. "I don't need this show, and I don't need any of you," he spat. And with that, the last day of filming came to a chaotic finish, and the producers abruptly stopped the cameras. Uncertain of how to save as the cast members left the set, their faces were a mixture of anger, sadness, and exhaustion. The show that had made them famous was now a distant memory, and the relationships that had been built on it were left in ruins. No one knew what the future held, but one thing was certain: the Love and Hip Hop cast would never be the same again. That was the most chaotic day of shooting yet, filled with explosive confrontations, betrayals, and an emotional roller coaster that left. We want to hear your thoughts on the last day of filming. Was Kirk right to leave the set, or should he have handled things differently? Do you think Mindy and Yandi can survive this chaos, or is their relationship on the rocks? Everyone is shocked and divided, and the question on everyone's mind is where these stars go from here. Is this the end of the road for Kirk, Rashida, Mency, and the rest of the crew? Or is there more drama on the horizon? If you believe that this was one of the most traumatic episodes in hip-hop and love history, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and remember to hit the like button. This will help BDS stay up to date on all the latest rumors and behind-the-scenes drama, because we have more shocking updates coming your way. You won't want to miss what comes next in this emotional roller coaster, so stay tuned and we'll see you in the next.